I'm on a mission to find the greatest game ever made. Welcome back to the series where I play people's childhood favorite games without an ounce of nostalgia and probably incite riots in the comments. Today we're looking at Far Cry 3, a game I somehow have never played, which is weird because I've played every other mainline Far Cry game after this one, but somehow never played this one, which is considered the best, but that's why I was playing it. I was excited. I was cautiously excited going into it because I wouldn't call myself a Far Cry fan. When I think about the Ubisoft formula, basically the first thing that comes to mind is open world fatigue. But I knew going into this that Far Cry 3 is a shorter, more concise experience than the rest of the series, right? So I was excited. I was excited to see what I was getting into. I like the idea of Far Cry. Lots of weapons, cool kills and that kind of thing, but I do get quite tired of every other Far Cry game, so I was optimistic, right? I'm always optimistic, so I was excited to get into it. So without any further ado, is Far Cry 3 the greatest game ever made? Before we get into it, there will be spoilers in this video. I'm going to be going over the main story, plot points, that kind of thing. So if you haven't played Far Cry 3, I would highly recommend saving this video for watch later, going to play it, and then coming back and telling me what you think. Because, it would suck to ruin your experience with the game. Also, a little bit of housekeeping. One more thing is I'm switching up the format of this series. All the other videos I've done have been kind of segmented into different categories, and then I rank each category, add them up, and then that's my final score. I wanted to have a more open-ended conversation. Like that kind of formula, it did add up to a pretty precise score, and I was happy with the scores. But I wanted to make it so that I could have like a full conversation about all the things in the game without having to stick to a, segmented kind of formula, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense. If you don't like this way of doing it and you prefer the old way, or if you have a new, better way of doing it, let me know in the comments. I'm always open to suggestions on how to do things, so, let me know. So now, actually, let's ask the question, is Far Cry 3 the greatest game ever made? Far Cry 3 follows a group of young California rich kids who are on a vacation on a fictional island loosely based on the Indonesian archipelago. Things immediately go south when they are kidnapped by Vaas, surprise, motherfucker! A unhinged crime boss who runs the island pretty much through crime, violence, and slavery, really. The game opens with you and your older brother trying to escape Vaas's camp. And things don't really go too well for especially your brother. He gets killed by Vaas, and you are rescued by Dennis Rogers, the supposed leader of this rebel group called the Rakyat. From there, the setup is simple. With the help of Dennis and a few other side characters, you're trying to save your friends and escape this island. Let's talk first about the island. And first of all, I love the aesthetic of this island. It absolutely nails the tropical vibe. Dense jungles, lots of wild animals from, tigers to Komodo dragons. Like, there's so many different animals in this game. There's massive waterfalls, deep caves, and just all the tropical island kind of stuff you would hope to see. It's great. I love that part of it. I didn't do too much exploring in this game, mostly because I was actively trying to avoid that, Ubisoft burnout that we all know too well. But even just driving between missions or doing missions in this world, it really worked. The world does a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to keeping things engaging. You'll be going to clear an outpost, and then all of a sudden a Komodo dragon comes up behind you and you have to shoot it, and then all the guards hear you shooting and they all come after you. That kind of thing really kept it like random and engaging in a way that a lot of games don't really do. This game, like, it had missions, right? You're going to do a mission, but the way you do that mission, the way it turns out, is going to be different every single time, which was fun. The game is almost 15 years old. It came out in 2012, and it kind of shows, but I think it still holds up pretty well. Like, graphically, it's not going to blow you away, but it's also not going to, hurt your eyes to look at, right? And aesthetically, it absolutely holds up. I think that this aesthetic is almost timeless. Even if it's kind of pixelated and stuff doesn't load like it should, like the textures don't load as well as they should, when you're wingsuiting off a waterfall and you can see the entire island, it still looks good. Like, it still looks nice. And I often found myself like looking at it and being like, damn, that's all right, Performance-wise, like I kind of touched on, it wasn't great. the textures did take a long time to load at times, and there were a few really annoying bugs, especially in missions where you have a companion with you. Often the companion would get bugged, and it would just be like, they'd be standing there being like, we gotta go, and then they're just standing there, and you like run forward, and then you're like, who the fuck are they? And then they're back there, and you're like, running out of time. And you're like, oh my god, okay. So that was annoying. Kind of funny, but also kind of annoying. And then there was this bug where the sound would just cut out sometimes, and I'd have to restart the game. And playing this on PC, I did have to do a little bit of tweaking to get it to run properly with like my frame rate and everything. It was weird and kind of annoying, but nothing like game breaking. I got it to work in the end, and honestly, when I got it to work, it worked well, so it was fine. And I will give it grace here because it is an older game, but there are games from this era that do perform better as well. So just keep that in mind when you're going into it, especially if you're on PC. I don't know how it is on Xbox. I think it's probably better because it was primarily an Xbox game, I think. One of the main reasons I wanted to play Far Cry 3 was because people constantly call it the best Far Cry game ever, right? And while I do think it's definitely in the top tier, I think probably top 3, I don't know, I really like Far Cry 4, and Far Cry 5, honestly, I think is underrated, but we'll get into all that later if we do have another video on those two. But I'm not convinced that Far Cry 3 is the clear greatest Far Cry game ever, right? I think that reputation comes down to two main things. This was the first Far Cry game to use the modern Ubisoft formula. And not only the first Far Cry game, but one of the first games to use the modern Ubisoft formula. So people weren't tired of it yet, right? And it's also much shorter than the newer entries, right? You complete it in 15 hours or so, and that's not enough time to make you, exhausted, right? It makes it tolerable just because of how condensed it is. But make no mistake, right? This is a Ubisoft game. It's very Ubisoft. You're clearing outposts, you're climbing radio towers to unlock new map regions, and the map itself is littered with icons. So if you don't like that kind of thing, it's no different here. And that's kind of what confused me when I was playing this game. I was like, okay, this is the best Far Cry game, so it's not going to have those annoying Ubisoft things. No, it still definitely does. They were just new back then. I will give credit where it's due. The radio towers were actually great, which I was surprised by because that sounds like the most boring open world side activity ever, right? But each tower is different. It offers a different, unique, platforming puzzle. And they're kind of challenging at times, which is fun. And literally every single one is different, which was awesome. The outposts, though, not for me. I completed a couple of them, especially the main story ones, but outside of the main story, I didn't really touch them too much. I didn't find them necessary, and honestly, clearing outposts is one of the most boring, side activities in an open world game for me personally, especially when the combat isn't, excellent to the point where I want to engage in it that much, With all that being said, this formula was innovative. Surprising, I know, it's surprising to say, but this formula was actually innovative in 2012. And it wasn't the first game to do it, but it packaged all these things into a neat little AAA package that people weren't even close to tired of yet. And that's why I understand why people call this the greatest Far Cry game ever. Because every other game after this, it evolves on that formula, and I think it does it better. But this game was the first one, and it also is more condensed and less bloated, and Ubisoft wasn't as hated as it is today back in 2012, right? But at the end of the day, I think for me, after playing all the other mainline Far Cry games, and games like Phoenix Rising and Watch Dogs and all those kind of games, I think that Far Cry 3 just doesn't hit the same as it probably does for a lot of people who played it in 2012. One thing that Far Cry 3 does do a lot better than every other Far Cry game is the pacing. I've kind of touched on it, but I rolled credits after 13-ish hours, and honestly, it was a perfect runtime for a game like this. And it always kept me engaged. Even if I wasn't engaging with the outposts as much as I could have, I think the fact that you're always being hunted by these pirates, and there's wild animals everywhere trying to kill you, and there's little secrets around every corner, even if they aren't great, you're just opening chests and finding secret notes that you'll never look at again, it was still cool, right? It still kept me somewhat engaged, especially for a shorter game. And that brings us to the gameplay. And this is where I feel Far Cry 3 is a noticeably weaker entry in the series. There just aren't enough options, really. Especially for stealth. You have your suppressed weapons, and you have a bow. Other than that, every tool you get is in the skill tree. Throwing knives, multi-kills, other abilities, they're all locked behind this skill tree, and I think the game would have been better if I was able to buy more stealthy kill options from the shop in the game. I think that would have made it a better experience because this game leans really heavily on stealth. Probably 50 to 60% of the missions are stealth missions, most of them being forced stealth missions. And while I don't hate stealth, I also don't love it. It can be great, right? Stealth can be really fun when you're given the right tools and when you're given the right gameplay mechanics to enable you to do cool things. But this was a game where stealth kind of felt like an option that wasn't meant to be taken most of the time, even when it was meant to be taken, if you know what I mean. That might not make sense, but that's kind of what it felt like to me. Now, when the game lets you get loud, this is where it really shines. The big chaotic missions where you're blowing stuff up, wingsuiting off cliffs and causing absolute mayhem, those are the highlights for me personally. The mission where you have to steal where you have to steal the list of Hoyt's men who are planning on betraying him was an absolute standout. You're shooting an RPG at a bridge with trucks on it, stealing the list, shooting everyone, and then jumping off a waterfall with your wingsuit and escaping. That was epic. That was true Far Cry. Like, that was pure Far Cry gameplay, in my opinion. And the mission where you save Riley and he's flying the helicopter while you're on the minigun, just blowing everything up, it was amazing. Like, that was exactly what I want out of a Far Cry game. My favorite part of the combat, though, was the environmental stuff. The way fire spreads in this game is actually really realistic. It spreads fast, and it spreads in a large area. It's not just the classic shoot red barrel, big boom kind of thing. When you make an explosion, you have to watch out for the fire, because often the fire will spread just as quickly to you as it does to the enemies that you're trying to saute. Most enemy encampments also had a tiger cage or something of the sort, where if you shoot it, you can let the tiger out and just watch it like maul everyone before you even have to go in there, which was a lot of fun a lot of the time. The mission where you have to burn the drug fields all while that reggae Skrillex song is playing was absolute cinema. Probably my favorite in the entire game, beside the mission with the wingsuit and the RPG blowing up the bridge. The gunplay itself, though, is fine. I would say it's not amazing. It's serviceable. It does its job. One thing that I didn't like was the limitation on ammo. I think, and I'll get into crafting later, and I know you can craft bigger ammo pouches, but I think limiting ammo this much didn't really do anything necessary. Like, this was a game where I got most of my enjoyment from causing absolute carnage, and I think limiting ammo kind of hindered that a bit. Not a huge point against it, really, but for me, I would have liked it with maybe a bit more generous amount of ammo that you can carry at the start of the game. And that takes us nicely into the crafting, which kind of had me torn a bit, because on the one hand, I don't love having to abandon the main mission, which was by far the best part of Far Cry 3, to hunt down a wild animal across the map just to craft a bigger ammo pouch. But on the other hand, I did like how they really stuck to their guns with it and really made it a core mechanic that you had to engage with. A lot of games have a crafting mechanic that is not necessary at all, and it's kind of just another menu screen that you have to scroll past to exit the game, really, is all it is. But here, they made it necessary. You have to craft medicines, ammo pouches, loot sacks, all the things. Like, everything that you could imagine you have to craft, you have to craft. And I can't really fault it on that, because as I said, a lot of games have a crafting mechanic that isn't necessary and it just feels like an afterthought. The game is also not easy, which makes crafting that much more important. There was more than a few missions where I was genuinely challenged by them, even just on normal difficulty, which was a nice change of pace, seeing as a lot of games in this genre and this series play it kind of safe with the difficulty. The characters were a big highlight for me. The main character, Jason Brody, is a rich, trust fund kid from California who probably has never had any hardship in his life. At the start of the game, he's a scared, kind of annoying kid who's clearly in way over his head, which is fair, right? His brother just died, all of his friends are kidnapped, and he's working with a rebel group trying to kill a bunch of pirates. I would also be scared and annoying. But as the story progresses, something interesting happens. Jason doesn't just get more tolerable of the violence and everything that's happening, he kind of starts to enjoy it. And this is very prevalent in the mission where you save Lisa from the burning building. And the whole time, Lisa is absolutely freaking out. She is losing her mind. And Jason is very clearly enjoying it. He's yelling and shouting and enjoy, right? Like he's loving it. He's blowing up all the pirate vehicles and trucks and stuff, and it's kind of fun to watch. Like, he's genuinely in his mode, which is cool. Towards the end of the story, this is where it really hits. It's when you save all your friends, right? Jason, all of his friends that are alive are saved. They have a boat. They can escape. Vaas is dead. That was all that was meant to happen, right? They're they're supposed to escape now. They're supposed to sail off into the sunset and leave it all behind. But that's not enough for Jason. For some reason, he is so hell-bent on killing Hoyt, who really had nothing to do with what was all going on. I mean, he did have something to do with it. He is Voss's boss, but he wasn't a main character in the game, right? Like, there's no reason for Jason to go out, risk his life to kill Hoyt just for revenge, I guess. And I think that's where you really see that Jason has changed. He's no longer just a kid who's trying to find his friends and escape this island, right? He is now a warrior. He's someone with a purpose, even if that purpose is not exactly good guy material. Earnhardt is another one of my favorite characters. He is a drugged up doctor who, I didn't trust him at the beginning, but his death at the end of the game, trying to protect your friends from the rock yacht, which was a big plot twist, it actually hit pretty hard, and I was really sad when you go to his mansion and it's all on fire and he's dying. That hit, right? Sam was probably my favorite side character. He was funny, charismatic. He was this like German army man, and he was awesome. I loved all the missions with him. They were always a lot of fun. And his death at the end of the game that hit the hardest, right? Like, you felt like you had outplayed Hoyt up until this point. You felt like you were one step ahead of him, but it turns out he was one step ahead of you, and just out of nowhere he stabs him, and it was crazy. I was like, whoa, what the hell? That was awesome. Sad, but awesome. Citra is the true leader of the rock yacht, and she's not only a leader, but they're kind of goddess warrior. She agrees to help you kill Vaas if you find her ritual knife, which was a standout story arc in the game. About halfway through the game, you realize that Citra is the sister of Vaas, and the only reason that Vaas has gone so mad is because of these spiritual rituals that Citra had put him through, which kind of makes you question, like, is Citra actually the good guy, or is she just the lesser of two evils here? You know, it's a real moral dilemma, if you will. As for Vaas, this might be a bit controversial. I don't think he's the absolute greatest video game character of all time, which kind of sounds crazy. It's like, how is that controversial? Like, that's a normal statement. But a lot of people do think that he is the best video game villain of all time. And I do think he's great. I think he's a very top tier villain. But he doesn't really have that character depth or arc that a lot of modern antagonists have. But what he does have is voice acting. The voice acting performance for Vaas is outstanding.
And then I started seeing it everywhere I looked, all these fucking pricks. Everywhere I looked, doing the exact same fucking thing. Over and over and over and over and over again. Thinking, this time, it's gonna be different. No, please. This time, it's gonna be different. I'm sorry. I don't like the way you are looking at me. Okay?
And you have to remember, this came in a time when actors didn't play video game characters as often as they do today. Nowadays, every big budget game has a pretty respectable list of actors, a pretty respectable cast. But back in the day, it was kind of niche to have a big actor play one of your main characters. Like, that was cool. And Michael Mando, who plays Vaas, did an incredible job. Every time Vaas was on screen, he absolutely stole the moment. He was scary. He gave multiple monologues that genuinely made you kind of fear him. And bonus points to Michael Mando being Canadian. That's cool. Now let's talk about the story. The first half of the story is pretty basic, even a bit boring. It's kind of a lot of go here, kill guy, steal intel kind of thing. But the second half of the story is great. I love the second half of the story. Everything involving the rock yacht with the ancient knife, the rituals, the heavy psychedelic vibe going on, it really worked for me. The underground city mission, when you're going to find the knife, felt like something straight out of Tomb Raider, and it was awesome. And the Ink Demon boss fight, which was completely out of pocket, I had no idea that was coming. It came from this spiritual drug trip where you take these psychedelics and you fight this giant fire-breathing demon boss, and it's awesome. It was really challenging, especially when it kept moving its head right as I was about to shoot in the most unpredictable ways. It was so frustrating, but also fun. Like, it was challenging. It was good. I liked it. And after this whole drug hallucination, when you're fighting this boss fight, you wake up and Citra is just doing tricks on it, which is pretty awesome. I like that. That was cool. Overall, the story isn't life-changing, right? It's very much a early 2010s video game story. But the concept works. A bunch of privileged tourists, you know, thrown into a brutal, morally twisted conflict. It's a solid setup. Some of the twists in the game were a bit predictable. When you find out that the person you're trying to torture for Hoyt is actually your younger brother who you thought was dead, I kind of saw that coming from a mile away. But as I said before, the Sam getting stabbed by Hoyt, that was a twist that I didn't see, and that hit hard. Not every video game story needs to be a spiritual awakening, right? Sometimes a 15-hour video gamey campaign is all you need, which is exactly what was given to us here. The last thing I'll touch on before we get into the final verdict and the rating is the leveling system. The leveling system is pretty straightforward. Earn XP, unlock perks, get stronger. I like the little video previews you get for each perk. Nothing groundbreaking, we've seen it before, but it's just a nice quality of life feature that I always like to see in a game. And one thing with the leveling system, which is completely my fault, I did not realize there was 3 skill trees. I was leveling up one skill tree for probably 7 hours until I found out there were 2 more. So up until like the 7-8 hour mark, I was running on 2 health bars, barely any stealth perks, and that probably cost me quite a bit of enjoyment in this game, which is completely my fault. Not knocking any points off it for the game itself. It is my own stupidity and it will not affect the score, but I just thought that was ridiculous on my part. So now's the time. Is Far Cry 3 the greatest game ever made? For me, no, not really even close. And that doesn't mean it's bad. It's good. It's great even, but it's still just a game, right? I never felt the immersion that I did in Red Dead 2, and I never felt like I was shaping the game world in a way that a lot of modern RPGs do. A lot of my favorite modern RPGs do. And I never even felt that pure moment-to-moment joy that I do from games like Halo or Doom or something like that. I enjoyed my time with Far Cry 3. I really did. But at the end of the day, it didn't scratch any itch that I can't get from a different game. If I had played this closer to launch, I would probably hold it in much higher regard, and I understand why people do. I really understand it. My final score for this is going to be a 63 out of 100. And if you're new here, that is a good score. It's not great, it's above average, 50 being average, 60 to 70 being good, 70 to 80 being really good, 80 to 90 being great, and 90 to 100 being absolutely best game of all time territory. All right, I've done a lot of talking. I'm worn out, but now it's your turn. Let me know, is Far Cry 3 your favorite game of all time? What do you think of it? And what makes it special to you? What games do you think I should cover next? Let me know all your favorite games. List 1, list 2, list 50 of them. I don't care. I want all the suggestions I can get. And if you enjoyed this and want to join me on this journey to find the elusive greatest game ever made, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. We'll be back next time, and I think next video will be Hades, which will be very interesting. I'm very much enjoying that game. I've been Janky. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.